Who gave you these bruises?
Nothing.
Call me. I can help you.
The fluorescent lights of Mercer Street Diner buzzed with their usual mechanical hum, casting everything in that peculiar yellow-white glow that made even fresh coffee look tired. Ada wiped down the counter for the third time that hour, her movements practiced and automatic. The concealer she'd applied that morning was starting to fail her, the purple-green bruise on her left cheekbone showing through in patches despite the 3 layers she'd carefully blended. Seoul's autumn had turned bitter overnight, and she thought about wearing a mask. Plenty of people still did, but Ji-hoon had forbidden it that morning, saying it made her look suspicious, like she had something to hide. Which, of course, she did. Ada had been in Seoul for 2 years now, teaching English at a hagwon in Gangnam during the day and working evening shifts at the diner to save money. At least, that's what she'd been doing before Ji-hoon convinced her to quit the hagwon, insisting that her Korean wasn't good enough, that the parents complained about her accent, that she was embarrassing herself. Now it was just the diner, just these double and triple shifts, just the slow accumulation of one in the envelope she kept hidden in the lining of her winter coat. 420,000 won so far. Not nearly enough for a plane ticket back to Lagos, but it was something. It had to be something. It was a Thursday afternoon, that dead zone between lunch and dinner, when the diner held only a handful of regulars, and the occasional stranger passing through. The ajumma who ran the place, Mrs. Kim, was in the back doing inventory, and Ada was alone on the floor. She preferred it that way. Fewer people to notice, fewer questions to deflect in her stilted Korean. The bell above the door chimed, and Ada glanced up from the coffee station. The man who entered didn't belong to the usual rhythm of the diner. He moved with a particular kind of certainty, his long black coat perfectly tailored, his dark hair swept back in a way that suggested expensive barbers and careful attention. Everything about him spoke of money and power, the kind that made the air shift when he walked into a room. When his eyes landed on her, Ada felt something tighten in her chest. He chose a booth near the window, settling into it with an ease that suggested he was comfortable anywhere, in any situation. Ada grabbed a menu and a glass of water, forcing her shoulders back, her spine straight. Just another customer. Just another tip to add to the envelope. Welcome, she said in Korean, her accent thick and unmistakable as she set the water down. Coffee? He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw his eyes track across her face with an intensity that made her want to turn away. Then he spoke in perfect, unaccented English. Coffee, black, and you can speak English with me. Ada felt a flutter of relief mixed with suspicion. Thank you. I'll get that for you. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her cold. Wait. She turned back, and he was staring at her face with a directness that made her skin prickle. His eyes weren't sympathetic or curious, they were reading her like a book, cataloging every detail. Come here, he said quietly. Ada hesitated, then stepped closer to the booth, her hands clasped in front of her apron. The man leaned forward, and before she could step back, he reached out and gently tilted her chin up with 2 fingers, turning her face toward the light streaming through the window. The touch was so unexpected, so presumptuous, that Ada froze completely. His fingers were warm against her skin, and his eyes narrowed as he examined her cheekbone, then shifted to look at the other side of her face, where a smaller bruise marked her temple. She could see the exact moment he spotted the fingerprint-shaped marks on her neck, barely covered by her collar. Don't, she started, but he released her chin and sat back, his expression hardening into something cold and dangerous. Who did this to you? Ada's hand flew to her cheek, and she stepped back, her rehearsed lie ready on her tongue. I fell. The stairs in my building are really steep, and you fell. His voice was flat, disbelieving, and landed on someone's fist, someone's hands around your throat. The diner suddenly felt too small, too hot. Ada glanced toward the kitchen, but Mrs. Kim was still in the back, oblivious. I don't know what you're talking about. I'll get your coffee. She walked away before he could respond, her heart hammering against her ribs. At the coffee station, her hands shook so badly that she had to set the pot down and grip the counter edge, breathing slowly through her nose. Who was this man? How dare he touch her like that? examine her like she was evidence at a crime scene. The question spiraled through her mind as she poured the coffee, and when she brought it back to his table, she set it down without meeting his eyes. Will there be anything else? Yes. His voice was calm now, almost gentle, which somehow made it more unnerving. Sit down. I can't. I'm working. Then I'll wait until your shift ends. Ada felt trapped in the weight of his gaze. There was no aggression in it, no threat, but there was an absolute certainty that frightened her more than Ji-hoon's fists ever had. This man expected to be obeyed not through fear but through sheer force of will. I'm fine, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Really? Thank you for your concern, but I don't need help. You're not fine. He reached into his coat and pulled out a business card, black with silver lettering that caught the light. He set it on the table between them. When you're ready to actually be fine, call that number. Anytime, day or night. Ada stared at the card but didn't touch it. The name embossed on it was simple, Min Jae. Below it, a phone number. Nothing else. No company, no title, no explanation. I don't need. The man who put those marks on you. Min Jae interrupted, his voice dropping lower. He's going to do it again. And again. And one day, he's going to go too far. And you won't walk away. He pulled out his wallet and placed 500,000 won in crisp bills next to the card. This is for you. Not for him. Hide it somewhere he can't find it. And when you're ready to leave, you call that number. I'll make sure you get out safely. Before Ada could protest, before she could push the money back or refuse the card, he stood and buttoned his coat with precise movements. Everyone deserves to be safe, he said, looking down at her with those piercing eyes. Everyone deserves to sleep without fear, to exist without checking over their shoulder. He paused at the edge of the booth. My name is Min Jae, and I'm very good at making problems disappear. Then he walked toward the door, his footsteps confident and unhurried. At the threshold, he paused and looked back, at her one last time. Use that number, Ada, before it's too late. He knew her name. She'd never told him her name. The realization hit her as the bell chimed his exit, leaving Ada standing alone with 500,000 won and a business card that felt like it weighed more than the world. She stared at the money on the table, her mind racing. How did he know her name? Had he asked Mrs. Kim? Had he been watching her? The thought should have terrified her, but instead, she felt something else, a strange mixture of hope and fear, that made her hands tremble as she picked up the bills and the card. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. Ada pocketed the money she couldn't afford not to, but the card stayed in her apron pocket, its edges sharp against her hip every time she moved. She told herself she'd throw it away. She told herself she didn't need help from a stranger, especially not one who looked at her like he could see straight through her skin to all the broken places inside. But when her shift ended at 10, and she stepped out into the cold Seoul night, the card was still in her pocket, and the money was tucked into her bra, where Ji-hoon wouldn't think to look. He was waiting for her outside, leaning against the wall near the diner's side exit, his phone glowing in his hand. Ada's stomach dropped the moment she saw him. He wasn't supposed to be here. He'd said he had to work late at the warehouse in Incheon. Yobo, he said, pocketing his phone with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Thought I'd pick you up. It's cold. Ada forced herself to keep walking toward him. Her keys clutched between her fingers like the tiny weapon they'd never actually be. You didn't have to do that. I was going to take the subway. What kind of boyfriend would I be if I let my girl freeze? He pushed off the wall and slung an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close enough that she could smell the soju on his breath. Come on, let's go home. She walked, with him to his car, never hers, always his, because he'd made it clear early on that he needed his space, but she needed his protection in this foreign country, where she didn't speak the language properly, and didn't understand the culture. The drive to his apartment in a rundown part of Yeongdangpo was silent except for the rattle of the heater, and the K-pop bleeding from the radio. Ji-hoon's jaw was tight, and Ada could feel the anger rolling off him in waves. When they pulled into the parking lot of his building, he killed the engine and turned to her. Empty your pockets. Ada's blood turned to ice. What? Your pockets? Empty them. Now. Ji-hoon. What's going on? His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist, squeezing hard enough to make her gasp. I said empty your fucking pockets, Ada. With shaking hands, she pulled out her phone, her keys, a few coins, and finally, the black business card. Ji-hoon snatched it from her fingers, his eyes scanning it in the dim light, from the street lamp. Who the fuck is Min Jae? I don't know. He was just a customer who gives you his personal number. Ji-hoon's voice was rising, his face flushing red, even in the darkness. You think I'm stupid? You think I don't know what this is? It's nothing. The slap came fast and hard, snapping her head to the side. Ada tasted blood where her teeth cut into her inner cheek. Don't lie to me, Ji-hoon shouted, grabbing her face and forcing her to look at him. How long have you been seeing him? How long have you been whoring around behind my back? I'm not, I swear, I just met him today. Another slap, harder this time. Ada's vision blurred with tears. You're coming upstairs, Ji-hoon said, his voice dropping to something low and dangerous. And you're going to tell me everything about this Min Jae bastard. And then you're going to call him, and tell him to stay the fuck away from what's mine. He got out of the car, and came around to her side, yanking the door open and pulling her out by her arm. Ada stumbled, her ankle twisting, but he didn't let her fall, just dragged her toward the building entrance. Her mind was spinning, panic flooding through her veins. She had to do something. She had to. The sleek black Genesis GV80 appeared out of nowhere, pulling into the parking lot with its headlights cutting through the darkness. It stopped directly in front of them, blocking their path, and Ji-hoon froze. The driver's door opened, and Min Jae stepped out. He looked different now, still composed, still perfectly dressed, but there was something in his eyes that made even Ji-hoon's grip on Ada's arm loosen slightly. Min Jae's gaze swept over them both, taking in Ji-hoon's flushed face, Ada's tears, the way she was cradling her injured ankle. Let her go, Min Jae said. His voice was quiet, but it carried. Ji-hoon's shock lasted only a moment before anger replaced it. Who the hell are you? This is none of your business. I'm making it my business. Min Jae took a step forward, and Ada saw two other men emerge from the back of the SUV, large men, in dark suits who flanked him like shadows. Let her go. She's my girlfriend. You can't just, she's a woman you've been beating, Min Jae interrupted, his tone turning to ice. And that ends tonight. Ada, come here. Ada looked between them, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. Ji-hoon's grip tightened painfully on her arm. You're not going anywhere, Ji-hoon hissed at her. We're going upstairs. And Min Jae moved faster than Ada thought possible. One moment he was standing by his car, the next he had crossed the distance between them, and his hand was locked around Ji-hoon's wrist, his grip iron hard. Ji-hoon yelped and released Ada, who stumbled backward. Touch her again, Min Jae said, his face inches from Ji-hoon's. And I will break every bone in your hand. Do you understand me? Ji-hoon tried to pull away, but Min Jae's grip didn't budge. Ada could see the fear creeping into her boyfriend's eyes. Ex-boyfriend, she realized with sudden clarity. Whatever happened next, she couldn't go back to him. She wouldn't survive it. I said, do you understand me? Yes, okay, just let go. Min Jae released him with a slight shove that sent Ji-hoon stumbling. Then he turned to Ada, and his expression softened infinitesimally. Get in the car, he said gently. Ada hesitated for only a heartbeat. Then she limped toward the Genesis, and one of Min Jae's men opened the back door for her. She slid into the leather seat, and the door closed with a solid, final sound. Through the tinted window, she watched Min Jae speak to Ji-hoon in rapid Korean. His voice too low to hear, but his body language unmistakable. Ji-hoon was shrinking, nodding frantically, his earlier bravado completely evaporated. When Min Jae finished speaking, he handed Ji-hoon something, the black business card, Ada realized, and said one more thing that made all the color drain from Ji-hoon's face. Then Min Jae got back in the driver's seat, started the engine, and they pulled away, leaving Ji-hoon standing alone in the parking lot, growing smaller and smaller in the side mirror, until he disappeared entirely. Ada pressed her shaking hands against her knees and tried to breathe. She'd done it. She'd actually left him. The relief was so overwhelming it made her dizzy, but underneath it was a current of fear. Who was Min Jae? What did he want from her? Nobody helped like this without expecting something in return. Are you hurt? Min Jae asked, his eyes finding hers in the rearview mirror. My ankle, she said quietly. I think I twisted it. And my face. We'll have someone look at you when we get to my place. A doctor. A real one. Not some clinic where they'll ask questions. Where are you taking me? Somewhere safe. He navigated the Seoul streets with practiced ease, heading toward Gangnam, toward the part of the city where the buildings gleamed and money spoke louder than words. Somewhere he'll never find you. I don't understand, Ada said, her voice breaking. Why are you doing this? You don't even know me. Min Jae was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than she'd heard it. I had a sister once, younger than me. She fell in love with the wrong man, and he hurt her, again and again. She was too ashamed to tell anyone, too afraid he'd get worse if she left. He paused, his hands tightening on the steering wheel. I found her too late. I swore after that day that I would never let it happen again. Not to anyone. Not while I had the power to stop it. Ada felt tears sliding down her cheeks. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be alive. Be free. That's enough. The car pulled into an underground garage beneath a gleaming high-rise in Cheongdam-dong. The kind of building Ada had only seen from the outside. Where, each apartment probably cost more than she'd make in 10 lifetimes. Min Jae parked in a private spot and came around to open her door, offering his hand. Can you walk? I think so. But when she tried to put weight on her ankle, she gasped in pain. Without hesitation, Min Jae slipped one arm behind her back, and the other under her knees, lifting her as easily as if she weighed nothing. I can walk? Ada protested weakly. Humor me. He carried her to a private elevator that required a key card, and they rode up in silence to the penthouse level. When the doors opened, Ada's breath caught. The apartment was stunning floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering Seoul skyline, minimalist furniture that looked like art, and a sense of space that felt almost obscene after the cramped apartment she'd been sharing with Ji Hoon-ae. Min Jae carried her to a plush leather couch and set her down gently. Stay here, he said. I'm going to call Dr. Yoon. He disappeared into another room, and Ada sat there, trying to process everything that had happened. An hour ago, she'd been preparing for another night of walking on eggshells, another night of wondering if Ji-hun's anger would boil over again. Now she was sitting in a penthouse in Gangnam, rescued by a man who moved through the world like he owned it. Min Jae returned with a glass of water and a blanket, draping it over her shoulders. Doctor Yoon will be here in 20 minutes. In the meantime, drink this. You're in shock. Ada took the water with trembling hands. Thank you, she whispered. I don't know how to repay you for. You don't owe me anything. He sat down in the chair across from her, his elbows on his knees, his eyes serious. But I need you to understand something, Ada. The kind of help I offer comes with certain realities. I'm not a good man. I do bad things to bad people. And the reason Ji Hoon-ae won't come looking for you isn't because he suddenly grew a conscience. It's because I made him understand what would happen to him if he did. What did you tell him? That's not important. What's important is that you're safe now. You can stay here tonight, and tomorrow we'll figure out your next steps. I can arrange for you to go anywhere you want back to Nigeria. To another city in Korea. Another country entirely. Or... He paused. You can stay. I have resources, connections. I can help you build a new life here, if that's what you want. Ada stared at him, trying to read the man behind those careful words. Why would you do all that? What do you want from me? Min Jae's expression softened almost imperceptibly. I want you to be safe. I want you to sleep without nightmares. I want you to look in the mirror and not see fear. He stood and walked to the windows, his hands in his pockets. My sister's name was Min Seo. She was 23 when she died. Her boyfriend beat her to death in a rage, and then called it an accident. By the time I got there, He trailed off, his jaw working. I was too late. I'm not a hero, Ada. I'm just a man who refuses to be too late, ever again. The raw pain in his voice made Ada's chest ache. She set down the water, and pulled the blanket tighter around herself. I'm sorry about your sister. So am I. He turned back to her. But you're alive. And you're going to stay that way. That's all that matters. Doctor. Yoon arrived shortly after, a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and gentle hands, who examined Ada's injuries with professional efficiency. The ankle was badly sprained, but not broken. The bruises would heal. The cut inside her mouth required no stitches. Dr. Yoon left her with pain medication and instructions to rest, along with a card for a therapist who specialized in trauma. After the doctor left, Min Jae showed Ada to a guest room that was larger than the entire apartment she'd shared with Ji-hoon. The bed looked like something from a luxury hotel, and there was an ensuite bathroom with a soaking tub and heated floors. There are clothes in the closet, Min Jae said, gesturing to the walk-in space. They should fit you. My assistant will bring you anything else you need tomorrow. For now, just rest. Ada stood in the doorway of this beautiful room, still wrapped in the blanket, and felt the weight of the day crash over her all at once. Min Jae? Min Jae? He paused, turning back to her. Thank you. For seeing me. For not ignoring it. Something flickered across his face. Pain, perhaps, or memory. Get some rest, Ada. You're safe now, I promise you that. Then he was gone, and Ada was alone in a stranger's penthouse, free for the first time in 2 years. She locked the door, then immediately felt guilty, and unlocked it. Min Jae had saved her. He wasn't the danger. She limped to the bathroom and turned on the light, finally allowing herself to look in the mirror. The bruises looked worse now, purple and yellow spreading across her dark skin. Her eyes were red from crying, her lips split and swollen. But beneath the damage, she saw something she hadn't seen in a long time. She saw herself, not Ji-hoon's girlfriend. Not the woman who apologized for things that weren't her fault. Just Ada. Just herself. She ran a bath as hot as she could stand and sank into it, letting the water wash away the fear and the pain and the lingering smell of Ji-hoon's cigarettes. And when she finally climbed into the massive bed, wrapped in silk pajamas that still had tags on them, she fell asleep within minutes. For the first time in 2 years, she didn't have nightmares. The morning sun streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows woke Ada, and for a disorienting moment, she didn't know where she was. Then memory flooded back: the diner, Min Jae, Ji-hoon's rage, the rescue. She sat up slowly, testing her ankle. It was still sore but bearable. She found Min Jae in the kitchen, dressed more casually than yesterday in dark jeans and a simple black sweater, making coffee with the kind of expensive machine that looked like it belonged in a cafe. He glanced up when she limped in. How are you feeling? Sore. But better. She accepted the coffee he offered, breathing in the rich aroma. This is amazing. It should be. The beans are flown in from Ethiopia. He leaned against the counter, studying her. We need to talk about what happens next. Ada's stomach tightened. Here it came, the price for his help. Okay. I meant what I said last night. You have options. I can have you on a flight back to Lagos this afternoon if that's what you want. I'll make sure you have enough money to start over, to be comfortable. And if I don't want to go back to Lagos, then you stay here. In Seoul. In this apartment, if you like, or I can set you up somewhere else. I can help you find work, legitimate work, where you won't have to hide bruises or lie about how you got them. He paused. But I need you to understand what you'd be accepting by staying in my orbit. I'm not a businessman in the conventional sense, Ada. I run an organization that operates outside the law. I protect people like you, yes, but I also do things that would horrify most people. If you stay, you'll be under my protection, but that means being associated with me, with what I do. Ada sipped her coffee, considering. What exactly do you do? Min Jae's smile was humorless. I solve problems. Sometimes those problems are men who hurt women. Sometimes they're business rivals who don't know when to back down. Sometimes they're corrupt politicians who need a reminder about who really runs this city. He set down his cup. I'm not asking you to be part of that world. But if you stay, you'll be adjacent to it. You'll be under my protection. Which means anyone who knows who I am will know not to touch you. But it also means you can never go back to the life you had before. I don't want to go back, Ada said immediately. I can't. Then stay. He said it, simply, as if offering her a place to crash, not a complete upheaval of her existence. Stay and figure out what you actually want to do with your life, without someone else dictating it to you. What about Ji-hoon? Ji-hoon is leaving Seoul today. I've arranged for him to take a job in Busan. He won't refuse, and he understands that if he ever tries to contact you again, the consequences will be severe. Ada felt a chill run down her spine. What did you do to him? Nothing he didn't deserve. But he's alive. If that's what you're asking. I don't create martyrs. I create object lessons. Min Jae's expression was unreadable. He'll spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder, wondering if I'm watching. That's punishment enough. The rational part of Ada's mind told her she should be disturbed by this, by the casual way Min Jae talked about intimidation and control. But the part of her that had spent 2 years being controlled, being hurt, being made to feel small, that part felt nothing but relief. I want to stay, she said, at least for now. I need time to think, to figure things out. Then you'll stay. Min Jae pushed off the counter. I have some business to attend to today, but my assistant, Haewon, will be here this afternoon, to take you shopping. You need clothes, toiletries, whatever makes you feel human again. And tomorrow, we'll start figuring out what Ada actually wants to do with her life. I used to paint, Ada said suddenly. The words surprised her. She hadn't thought about painting in so long. Ji-hoon had called it a waste of time, a childish dream. Before I came to Korea, I was studying art at university in Lagos. I had to drop out when my father died. And then I came here to teach English and make money, and I just stopped. Min Jae studied her for a long moment. Then you'll paint again. I'll have a studio set up for you. You don't have to. I want to. He said it with such finality that Ada didn't argue. Everyone should have space to create, to be themselves without fear or judgment. Consider it part of your recovery. He left shortly after, driven away in that sleek Genesis, by one of his men, and Ada was alone in the penthouse. Haewon arrived around noon, a woman in her 30s with short hair and an efficient manner who spoke perfect English and treated Ada with a warmth that suggested Min Jae had told her everything. Boss says you need everything, Haewon said cheerfully, pulling out a tablet. So, let's start with the basics and work our way up. Clothes, shoes, makeup, skincare. Do you have any preferences? They spent the afternoon shopping in Apgujeong, and Ada felt like she was in a dream. Haewon took her to boutiques where the clothes actually fit her body, where the sales assistants didn't stare at her dark skin like she was an anomaly. She bought jeans and sweaters, dresses and shoes, makeup in shades that matched her complexion. Haewon insisted she get everything. She even glanced at twice, waving Min Jae's black card like it was made of magic. He said not to worry about the cost, Haewon said, when Ada protested. And trust me, you don't want to argue with him. He's very stubborn when he decides to take care of someone. Does he do this often? Rescue people? Haewon's expression grew more serious. Sometimes, when he can. His sister, that changed him. Made him more aware of how many people are suffering in silence. He can't save everyone, but the ones he can? She shrugged. He doesn't do anything halfway. By the time they returned to the penthouse, Ada was exhausted but in a good way. Her ankle barely hurt anymore, and her arms were full of shopping bags containing a new wardrobe, a new life. Haewon helped her put everything away, then left her with a gentle reminder to call if she needed anything. Ada spent the evening exploring the penthouse, discovering the library full of books in Korean, English, and Japanese, the fully stocked kitchen, the second bathroom, with its rain shower and heated towel racks. She found herself in the room Min Jae had gestured toward earlier, his study, filled with dark wood furniture and the lingering scent of his cologne. She shouldn't have been snooping, but curiosity drove her to the bookshelf, where a silver-framed photograph caught her eye. It showed a younger Min Jae, with his arm around a beautiful girl, who shared his features, his sister, clearly, Min Seo. They were both laughing at something off-camera, and the joy in their faces made Ada's chest ache. She was 20 when that was taken, Min Jae's voice said from the doorway, and Ada jumped, nearly dropping the frame. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. It's fine. He crossed to her and took the photo, looking at it with an expression that was carefully neutral. This was taken at her university graduation. She'd just gotten accepted into a graduate program for literature. She was so happy that day. He set the frame back on the shelf with precise care. 3 months later, she was dead. I'm so sorry. So am I. He turned to her. And Ada saw the weight he carried behind those dark eyes. But that's why you're here. Why I'll help anyone I can help. Because maybe if enough people had paid attention, if enough people had cared, she'd still be here. Ada didn't think. She just stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. He stiffened for a moment, clearly not expecting the gesture. Then slowly his arms came up and returned the embrace. They stood there in his study, two wounded people holding on to each other, and Ada felt something shift between them. When they finally pulled apart, Min Jae cleared his throat. I had the spare room converted today. There's an art studio waiting for you on the terrace. You what? He almost smiled. Come see. He led her through the penthouse to a glass door she hadn't noticed before, and when he opened it, Ada gasped. The terrace had been transformed. There were easels and canvases, paints and brushes, organized on a rolling cart. Perfect natural light from the evening sun. It was more than she'd ever dreamed of having. Min Jae, this is too much. It's not enough, he said quietly. You lost yourself for 2 years. This is me helping you find yourself again. Paint whatever you want. Whenever you want. No judgment. No pressure. Ada felt tears welling up, and she wiped them away impatiently. Why are you doing all this for me? He was quiet for a moment, then said, because when I saw you in that diner, I saw my sister. I saw every woman who's ever been hurt by someone who claimed to love them, and I thought, not this time. This time, I'm not too late. He met her eyes. And maybe because I see something in you that reminds me there's still good in the world. Still things worth protecting. The moment stretched between them, charged with something Ada didn't quite understand but felt all the way to her bones. Then Min Jae stepped back, breaking the spell. I'll let you explore. Dinner will be delivered around 8. I hope you like Thai food. I love Thai food. Good. He paused at the door. Ada? Welcome home. Then he was gone, and Ada was alone on the terrace with the Seoul skyline glittering before her and an entire studio full of possibility at her fingertips. She picked up a brush, felt its weight in her hand, and for the first time in 2 years, she felt like herself again. She painted until midnight, losing herself in color and movement. And when she finally went to bed, she fell asleep with paint on her fingers and hope in her heart. The days turned into weeks, and Ada fell into a rhythm she'd never known before. She woke when she wanted to, painted for hours on the terrace, and slowly began to heal. Min Jae was often gone during the day, attending to his mysterious business, but he was always home for dinner. They'd eat together, talking about art, and books, and everything, except what he did when he left the penthouse. Ada learned that he was funny in a dry, subtle way, that he'd lived in New York for 5 years, and spoke English without any accent, that he loved jazz music, and hated seafood, which was unusual for a Korean, that he had a scar on his left shoulder from a knife fight he refused to talk about. And Min Jae learned that Ada had grown up in Lagos with 3 younger siblings she still sent money to whenever she could, that her mother was a teacher, and her father had been a civil engineer, that she'd come to Korea chasing a dream of adventure and independence, only to find herself trapped, that she missed Nigerian food more than anything, especially her mother's jollof rice and pepper soup. 3 weeks after Ada arrived, Min Jae came home early with grocery bags full of ingredients, and announced that he was making her Nigerian food for dinner. You cook? Ada asked, surprised. I'm full of surprises. He started pulling out tomatoes, peppers, onions. I had Haewon research recipes. I can't promise it'll be authentic, but I figured you miss home-cooked food. Ada watched him move around the kitchen with the same efficiency he brought to everything else, and something warm bloomed in her chest. He'd researched Nigerian recipes for her. He'd gone shopping. He was standing in his designer kitchen, sleeves rolled up, trying to make jollof rice because he thought it would make her happy. Let me help, she said, moving to stand beside him. You don't have to. I want to. They cooked together, Ada guiding him through the process, laughing when he added too much pepper and had to start over. The kitchen filled with familiar scents that made Ada homesick and happy at the same time. When they finally sat down to eat, the rice wasn't perfect, but it tasted like effort and care. This is really good, Ada said honestly. You're being polite. No, really. It's good, maybe not as good as my mother's, but, she smiled. Thank you for trying. Min-jae set down his fork and looked at her across the table. Ada, I need to tell you something. Her stomach dropped. Okay. I have feelings for you. He said it plainly, without ceremony. I've tried not to. You're healing, you're vulnerable, and the last thing you need is me complicating your recovery. But I need you to know, I care about you, more than I should. Ada's heart hammered in her chest. She'd felt it too, this pull between them, but she'd been afraid to name it, afraid it was just gratitude or dependence or trauma bonding. I care about you too, she admitted quietly, but I don't know if what I'm feeling is real, or if it's just because you saved me. I know. That's why I'm not asking you for anything. I'm just telling you the truth. So you know. So there's no confusion. He leaned back in his chair. Take all the time you need to figure out what you want. I'll be here regardless. As a friend, as a protector, as whatever you need me to be. Ada studied him, this complicated, dangerous, gentle man who'd pulled her out of hell and asked for nothing in return. Can I ask you something? Anything. Are you a good man? Min-jae considered the question seriously. No. I've done terrible things. I'll probably do more terrible things. But I try to aim my violence at people who deserve it. I try to protect people who can't protect themselves. Does that make me good? I don't know. But it makes me better than I used to be. Your sister would be proud of you, Ada said softly. For what you've become. For saving people like me. His expression cracked, just for a moment, and Ada saw the grief underneath. I hope so. They finished dinner in comfortable silence, and later, when they said goodnight in the hallway between their rooms, Min-jae touched her cheek gently, the same spot where Ji-hun's fist had left its mark, now almost healed. You're so strong, he said quietly. Stronger than you know. Then, he was gone, and Ada was alone with her thoughts, and her rapidly beating heart. The weeks turned into months. Winter settled over Seoul, and Ada painted her way through it. She created canvases, full of color and light, exercising her demons one brushstroke at a time. Min-jae hung her paintings throughout the penthouse, treating each one like a masterpiece. They grew closer, slowly, carefully, like two wounded animals learning to trust. Min-jae never pushed, never demanded. He simply existed beside her, steady and constant. He told her about his business, not everything, but enough that she understood the weight of what he carried. The people he protected, the violence he meted out, the careful balance he maintained between power and chaos. And Ada told him about her time with Ji-hun. The gradual erosion of her self-worth, the isolation, the fear, how she'd lost herself so completely that she'd almost forgotten who she was before him. Min-jae listened without judgment, his anger a palpable thing, but carefully controlled. I'll never let anyone hurt you again, he said one night as they sat on the couch watching the city lights. That's a promise. You can't protect me from everything. Watch me. It was arrogant and impossible and made her feel safer than she'd ever felt in her life. Their first kiss happened on a Tuesday in February. Ada had been painting, and Min-jae had come home early, carrying flowers, not roses, but bright sunflowers that reminded her of Legos. She'd turned from her canvas, paint-streaked and happy, and seen the way he was looking at her. Min-jae? You're beautiful, he said simply. I needed you to know that. You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Ada set down her brush and crossed to him. I think I'm ready. Ready for what? For this. For you. For us. He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs gentle against her cheeks. Are you sure? I'm sure. He kissed her then, soft and careful, like she was something precious that might break. Ada melted into it, into him, feeling safe and wanted and seen. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. I've wanted to do that for months. Min-jae admitted. So have I. Their relationship shifted after that, deepening into something neither of them had expected. Min-jae was an attentive lover, patient and generous, always putting her comfort first. He learned the geography of her body the way he learned everything else, with careful attention and genuine interest. And Ada discovered that intimacy could be gentle, could be joyful, could be something other than pain and obligation. The first time they made love, Min-jae took his time. They were in his room, Ada's choice, wanting to be in his space, surrounded by him. The city glittered outside the windows, but Ada only had eyes for the man above her, the way he looked at her like she was a miracle. Tell me if it's too much, he murmured, pressing kisses along her collarbone. Tell me if you need me to stop. Don't stop, she breathed. Please don't stop. He made her feel worshipped, made her feel whole. His hands were reverent on her skin, tracing the places where bruises used to be, replacing bad memories with good ones. When he entered her, slow and careful, Ada felt tears slide down her temples, not from pain but from the overwhelming sensation of being cherished. Ada, he groaned, his control slipping. You're perfect. You're so perfect. She wrapped her legs around his waist, pulling him deeper, chasing the building pleasure that coiled low in her belly. They moved together in a rhythm that felt ancient and new all at once, and when Ada finally shattered, Min-jae was right there with her, burying his face in her neck, and whispering her name like a prayer. Afterward, they lay tangled together, skin against skin, hearts beating in sync. I love you, Min-jae said quietly. I know it's fast, I know you might not be ready to hear it, but I love you. Ada turned in his arms, meeting his eyes. I love you too. I think I have for a while now. I was just afraid to admit it. He kissed her forehead. You never have to be afraid again. Not with me. They spent the rest of the night like that, talking and touching, building something real and solid from the wreckage of their pasts. 6 months after Min-jae had first walked into that diner, he took Ada to the rooftop of the penthouse building for dinner. The space had been transformed, fairy lights strung overhead, a table set with candles and flowers, the Seoul skyline providing a breathtaking backdrop. What's all this? Ada asked, touched. A celebration. Of you. Of us. Of the fact that you're here and alive, and mine. He pulled out her chair with a flourish. Sit. Let me take care of you. The meal was perfect. All her favorite foods, prepared by a private chef Min-jae had hired for the evening. They ate, and laughed, and drank wine, and Ada felt more content than she ever thought possible. This was her life now. This beautiful, complicated, unexpected life. When dessert was finished, Min-jae stood and held out his hand. Dance with me. There's no music. He pulled out his phone, and suddenly jazz drifted through the speakers. Coltrane, her favorite. Ada let him pull her close, and they swayed together under the stars, the city pulsing around them. I have something for you, Min-jae said after a while. You've already given me everything. Not everything. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, but when he opened it, Ada saw it didn't contain a ring. Instead, there was a golden key. What's this? A place. A house on the coast. In Busan. Private. Secure. Beautiful. I bought it last month. He took the key, and pressed it into her palm. It's ours. A sanctuary. Somewhere we can go when the city gets too loud, when I need to remember what I'm fighting for. Ada looked at the key, then at him, her eyes filling with tears. Min-jae. I'm not proposing, he said quickly. Not yet. I know you're still finding yourself, and I don't want to rush you. But I want you to know that I see a future with you. A real one. And I wanted to give you something that shows you, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere either, Ada said, closing her fist around the key. I love you. I love this life we're building. I love who I'm becoming with you. He kissed her then, deep and passionate, and Ada felt it in her bones. This was real. This was forever. This complicated, dangerous, beautiful man had saved her life, and in return, she'd given him something to live for, beyond revenge and protection. When they finally pulled apart, Min-jae rested his forehead against hers. Thank you. For what? For trusting me. For staying. For being the light I didn't know I needed. Ada smiled through her tears. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. They stayed on that rooftop until the early hours of the morning, wrapped in each other, planning a future that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago. And when they finally went back downstairs, Ada took the golden key and placed it on her keychain, right next to the keys to the penthouse. She was home. Finally, truly home. And it didn't matter that her home was with a crime boss who walked the line between light and darkness. It didn't matter that their life would always be complicated, always tinged with danger. What mattered was that she was safe, she was loved, and she was free. Ada had spent 2 years trapped in a nightmare, but Min Jae had pulled her into a dream, and she would spend the rest of her life painting that dream into existence, one canvas at a time, with a man who loved her fiercely and completely standing beside her. The mirror in their bedroom caught Ada's reflection as she brushed her teeth that night, and for the first time in years, she smiled at what she saw. Not a victim, not someone broken and afraid, just Ada, survivor, artist, woman loved and cherished, and that was more than enough. That was everything.